Hello and welcome to Tricks of the Esther channel. Today is the 11th of August 2017, and in today's video we have a 4-in-1 special. We're going to be talking about pastors. All right, I'm going to try to show you guys that you don't really need to be going to indoctrination centers or listening to the so-called pastors that you go to, because for me, I see church, especially if you're going to a building, as an indoctrination center, or sometimes as I call it, a social gathering, because it's there where you put on your best behavior, put on your best clothes, take your kids out, and sit and listen to these guys teach from a so-called high place, because that's what the Bible calls it, a high place, an elevated place which is made with human stones, which the Bible always shows that you should never ever build an altar of God from with stones made out of concrete or hewn stones. Rather, you should just pick up the rocks and just build something. So in my own understanding, as I've come to understand, because I've listened to a lot of these so-called preachers, they don't tell you anything truthful. Now, am I saying that you wouldn't learn anything from a pastor? Of course you're going to learn something, but you'll never learn the truth. That's just what it is. So in today's feature, we have a 4-in-1 special in the fact that we're going to be looking at certain pastors who are transgender that you may not know. The new age pastors today who look so hip, dress in nice clothes, look fly, tattoos, earrings, and all sorts of stuff, telling you that they're preaching to you the gospel of God when they're actually preaching you the gospel of damnation, the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is actually a lie. So someone might say, did I say Jesus Christ? Well, Jesus Christ is a lie. He never existed, because the images of Jesus Christ that we see today are based on the pictures of a guy called Caesar Borgia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right. He happened to be, I think, one of the sons of a so-called family of popes way back in history, and his pictures were made out to look like him, because you have to understand that Caesar Borgia is white and Jesus is white. But in all truth, the person that we talk about in respect to the Son of God Almighty, his name was never Jesus. His name was Yehoshua. I'm going to prove that to you in a second. So if it's your first time on the channel, I'd like to welcome you, but I like for you to pause the video right here, because you probably heard of so many things, and you might try to want to understand what's really going on, and you may have too many questions if it's your first time. So I advise that you pause the video right here and look for the primer video on this channel. I'm going to show you how to get to the primer video in a second. So this is how you get to the primer video. It's going to be the oldest video on this channel. It's also going to have a playlist. Sorry to say, it's going to have a playlist also, which you can look up on the channel. So when you click on the primer video, all right, there's also a document that's attached to every video that we make on this channel, and it will be in the description section of the video. So as I'm hovering my mouse right now, that's the description section. So if you click on this link right here, it will take you to a document. Now this document is going to be titled Male versus Female Visual Differences, right? It's a document that I advise that you should have, because it's going to show you the visual differences between male and female. It's not rocket science. It's something that you've been looking at all your life, but your brain didn't take notice of it, because like I always say on this channel, look with your eyes and see with your brain, because it's your brain that makes understanding of what you're looking at, which is knowledge. You get knowledge from looking, but you get understanding from your brain. Okay, that's why the Bible, for example, says, all right, in all your wisdom get wisdom, but in all your getting get understanding. One of the greatest men who ever lived in the game of wisdom and knowledge and spotting tricks of the trade, as I say it, King Shlomo. People call him King Solomon, but his real name was Shlomo in the Hebrew. Said, in all you're getting, all right, get wisdom, but in all you're getting, get understanding. Understanding comes from allowing your brain, putting your brain to work, letting those neurons and synapses fire. Without that, you can't understand a whole lot of stuff. So you have to get this document. It's about 44 pages long, but I guarantee you it will take you like 30 minutes to go through it. and it just has a lot of pictures, and by the end of it you'll be able to transvestigate anybody. Now the aim of this channel, like I said before, as I usually say on this channel, is not that it's not a transvestigation channel. It's not at all. So if you're on this channel and you want to learn something about transvestigation or transgenders, you've come to the wrong channel. I just have to say it right here and now, because from henceforth, from today, which happens to be the 11th of August, I'm gonna be making the videos so difficult for someone to actually go to the transgender part and just, you know, get and find out if the person is transgender or not. So from now on, I'm gonna be making the video very, very difficult. So if you like fast forwarding to the end of the video to actually look at transgenders and see if someone is transgender or not, it's going to be very difficult from henceforth, because I'm going to take a detour from the usual way I make videos. It's going to be very, very different from henceforth, starting with this video. So you would have to sit through the whole length of the video to find out if the person is transgender or not, because I'm not just going to be talking about the person like at the end of the video. I'll just be mixing it here and there, so you will know when the transvestigation starts and where it ends, because the aim of this channel is to teach people, to educate people on real knowledge and wisdom. Because if we're only learning about transgenders, that is the, let's say, the basis of things that we should be learning about. Because you have to understand that we all came from a woman. We were all born of a woman. Is the first thing you gotta know, because you're born from a woman. All right. So if we've come to this point in which we can't distinguish between male and female, that means we as a people are very, very dumb. So if that's the only thing you're gonna be interested in when you get to this channel and you watch, you're gonna be very, very sorely disappointed from now on. I just have to let you know that. So before we get on to the video, I usually like putting warnings in place. Today is going to be a very, very deep video, because I'm going to be talking about the Bible. So if you do not like the Bible, if the subject of the Bible irritates you, because it's going to be very, very irritating, because I'm going to make you understand today that the Bible is not subject to any private interpretation. The Bible is a literal book. It's not symbolic. It might be symbolic when it's talking about prophecies, because when you have people living in the age in which they were living way back in history, trying to explain things in the future, and they don't have words for it, all right? So they just try to describe it from a standpoint. Okay, let me just give you a typical example. Now imagine if it was somebody living in the early, let's say 1100, right, AD, and you were trying to explain that you saw an aeroplane fly, all right? Would you have words to describe an aeroplane? You probably wouldn't, because the aeroplanes is a word that is, let's say, predominantly used in the 21st century. So when you look at the Bible and you look at, because one of the greatest mistakes that we've ever had in studying the Bible is taking it as a symbolic book. That means it's not literal in its meaning. The Bible is literal from Genesis to Revelation. If you're reading especially the Geneva Bible, which I always do recommend, or you're reading the King James Bible, it is literal. It's not symbolic in any way, sorry to say. So if you ever go to, because I advise people, just stay away from the indoctrination centers called churches, because there is no truth in them. They're all working for the Vatican, as I'm going to prove today, and you're going to see that. I'm going to show you all your pastors that are fake, all right? So there's that term, pastor, should not be used at all right? Because we are all children of God if you believe in Yehoshua, all right? So, like I'm saying, if you do not like the Bible irritates you, please pause the video and exit, okay? The second warning is that channel rules are still in effect. Before you label someone a transgender on this channel, you have to provide facts in links and pictures of the videos that you're using to make that assertion. And those facts have to be centered about the female skeletal structure, because the only thing that differentiates a woman from a man, or a man from a woman, is the fact that a woman is designed to give birth. Her skeletal structure is designed to give birth And that means that a woman has an arch in her spine or an arch in her back. Her pelvis is tilted forward so she can accommodate a child inside her pelvis. She has a wide pubic arch, and her hips are below the crotch for easy childbirth. So if you're going to label someone a transgender, you have to supply those facts with the links and the pictures in your comment section. Otherwise, those comments are going to be deleted or blocked. If you start your comments off with long arms, long index fingers, skulls, jaw lines, right? Adonis belts, all that nonsense that you've learned from other YouTube channels, and you bring it on here, you're going to be deleted or you're going to be blocked. That's just fact. So that's one warning I have to put. Then the next warning is that this is going to be a very long video. So if you can't sit through a long video, you just have to exit out of this video and go find some other video to watch. All right. And then the next thing, as usual, that I always like to say that we are not against transgenders. If you're an adult and you want to leave the illusion or delusion that you're the sex, your sex is different from your birth sex or gender sex, that's really up to you. And as usual, the Vatican hasn't changed. They're the ones responsible for the organized transgendering of young children. So that's that. And so let's move on further. All right. So today's show, we're gonna be featuring, like I said, Carl Lentz and another pastor. Here, let me just put it right. They call him Pastor Carl Lentz. And then there's another pastor called Pastor Levi Lusko. Then we're gonna have a feature, just a bonus on Justin Bieber. Now, as I've said before, Justin Bieber is not going to be featured. Like we're not going to have a video for her because she's too easy a target. You know what I mean? I like pulling out the transgenders that people would never ever think about that they're a transgender or not. Then we'll also have a special feature on Oprah Winfrey as well. We're gonna find out if Oprah Winfrey is transgendered or not today. So but you have to sit through the video. That's just the truth about it, because you will know when the transvestigation starts or where it ends. You just have to sit through the whole video to find out. So first of all, I play a video right here to show you where a female's hip is at. And the video plays and you can see that's a woman right there. She's spreading downwards, and the widest point in her body is going to be her hips, and it's always going to be below her crotch. So I play the video and a tape goes around for you to see where a female's hip is at. And as you can see, the tape goes around and it's below the crotch. The female's going to spin around so you can see from the back where that is. And as you can see right there, it's just slightly above the bum line but below the crotch. You should know that. Without this measurement, a woman cannot fit into her clothes. It would be impossible. So all the clothes you get at your favorite designers wouldn't work because you wouldn't be able to fit. So I move you over to a document, and this is a document, and you can see right now I have a female to my left and a male to my right, and the female has an arch in her back. The arch in the back is extra support for the weight of carrying children, and also because the pelvis of a woman is tilted forward. So the spinal cord or the spinal vertebrae has to accommodate the fact that that pelvis is tilted forward. So it arches into a C or an S depending on where you draw it from. Okay? A male does not have an arch in his back. Males have straight backs. If a man's back wants to arch, it's going to arch outside in the shape of a D, as you can see here, or in the shape of a B, but straight into the pelvis. It's never going to be an arch in a man's back. So I scroll into document. This is a document advice that you should have. And as you can see, here is a woman here, right here, and she's arching her back inwards. If a woman arches a woman's back is always going to arch more than a man's back. If a woman arches her back outwards, it's going to arch much more that it looks like a humpback. So it doesn't matter what size the woman is, as I'm going to scroll into the document to show you that it doesn't really matter if she's big or small. My document's loading, so I'm going to allow it to load up. So here is a big woman to my left, but you see her has an arch in her back. The pelvis is tilted forward. a slim or tiny female to my right. She still has a C-shaped arch in the back and the pelvis is tilted forward. It doesn't matter if the female's got muscles. As you can see here, there's two muscular females, both arch in the back. And so this is the subject of feature today, transvestigation, which we have. It's Pastor Carl Lentz right here and Pastor Levi Lusko. All right, so here is the feature. Now you guys are probably waiting for me to get into the transvestigation, but like I'm said, I'm gonna trick you guys. The way I make videos is gonna be different, so you won't know when this transvestigation starts and when it ends. You have to sit through the video, and I apologize for it. So do you think I should start the transvestigation right now? If you're still watching, nah, I'm not. I'm gonna just make you guys sit through the video because you will know when it starts and when it ends. So let's move on to something else. So another warning that I have to put up in this video is that I'm not going to be answering any comments in this particular video in terms that that regards to the Bible, because the Bible has been made to be such a ridicule by the Vatican and its team of indoctrination masters called pastors, your popular teller evangelists, and all other pastors who are working under the 501c3 Act under the World Council of Churches, or let's say the National Council of Churches, which all pastors are affiliated with. Even they don't say they don't belong, they're indirectly affiliated with one. So I'm not going to be answering any comments on that. So if you want to ask me any question, especially on the Bible, you have to send me an email. I have to say that again. I'm not going to answer any questions in the comment section that is related to the Bible. If you want to ask me a question, send me an email. And what is my email? It is the same as the name of the channel, Tricks of the A Straight, right? That's the name of the channel, at gmail.com. So the email is the same as the name of the channel, at gmail.com. So that would be Tricks of the S Straight at gmail.com. So send me an email. I'm not going to answer any comments, all right? So now the first step, I'm going to lay a foundation into studying, because there's been a whole lot of misunderstanding when studying the Bible, and I can't blame people for it, because the one thing that God said you should do, they haven't done it, because it's by God's grace that the Protestant Reformation started off with Martin Luther when he nailed his thesis to the Catholic door or post or wall or whatever the case might be. It was for a reason. And the first mass-produced Bible was the Geneva Bible, all right, which today has been relegated to the background by all the churches. They never read from the Geneva Bible. They'll always read first and foremost from the King James Bible. Am I saying the King James Bible is not correct or not at all? There's a video you have to watch that I can explain that. It's called the Shakira video, and let me point you to that video, okay? I am sorry I said it was the Shakira video. I apologize. So the video that you have to watch to understand the reason that you can trust the Geneva Bible, most especially, and also the King James Bible, happens to be the Laurie Hernandez video right here, like I'm hovering over with my mouse. So you have to watch this video. As you can see here, I said Bibles to be trusted, and I'll give you a whole lot of explanation on why you can trust the Bible, especially the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible. So now, when getting back to laying the foundation of how we're gonna get into this show, so you can understand that you really do not need a pastor. All you need is your Bible. I'm going to explain also the things that you're going to be looking at for when you're trying to listen to someone, or in terms of studying the Bible, that there's certain things you should have to look for to understand that, or let's say certain tips for you to know that those people who call themselves pastors are all fake. None of them is real, okay? And I'm going to show you that. But first of all, I want to lay a foundation for what we are getting into. And the first foundation I have to lay is to make you understand the meaning of the word seed, because that's a very popular term in the so-called Christian myth or terminology of seed, which they say sow seeds. You've probably heard it in the video. I'm sorry, on your TV with your popular evangelist, whatever the name might be. They say sow seeds and God is going to bless you. All right. They say that with so much vigor, like it's actually real. It's a myth. All right. So we're gonna dispel all those Christian myths today. So you have no reason to ever listen or have a pastor or even go to church. All you need is your Bible. If you want to study, you can study your Bible with friends or families at home and just sit down. You don't need to go to any church, all right? Any building that says it's called a church. All right, so let me lay the foundation. So first of all, we're going to take a look at the dictionary meaning of seed, okay? So definition of seed before we go into the Bible to show you what the Bible says, all right? It says here, plural, seeds or seeds, right? The grains or ripened ovals of plant used for sowing, all right? So whenever you hear that your fake pastor on TV says sow a seed, I'm sorry I'm laughing. I just have to laugh at this one because people are so indoctrinated. They say sow a seed and you take money down to the pastor. Money is not seed, okay? So from the dictionary meaning first, before we get into the Bible, seeds are the grains or ripened ovals of plants used for sowing. Okay, let's get into the Bible now to see what seed means and if the Bible is actually correct. Okay. Now I'm reading from the I'm reading from the King James Bible, but that's the Bible that most people have, but you can also study from the Geneva Bible as well. It says here, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth, let me read again. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So as you can see right here, when the Bible talks about seed in the Bible, it's talking about crops or plants. It's not talking about, as the televangelist would say, bring your money. Money and seed is not the same thing, all right? Just for the benefit of the doubt, okay? Let me just give you the explanation of money, all right? Just let me give you a definition of money. So the definition of money, I think I'm going to make a video to actually explain what money actually is so people don't get fooled anymore by it, all right? So as you can see, the definition of money here says a current medium of exchange in the form of coins and banknotes collectively. Does money mean seed as you see the definition right here? No, it's not. So in my definition, what is the actual definition of money? This is my understanding of the definition of money, because the so-called Vatican schools have made the understanding of money and what money actually is to be lost, so people can never tell what money is. Money is real money. Is not the banknotes like this definition actually tells you, coins and banknotes. Money is anything that has intrinsic value, in which any law made cannot change the intrinsic value or nature of it. That's my own definition of money. I don't know what it is for you, but that is actually the real definition of money. So what am I saying, for example? So if, let's say, your government makes a law, all right, about a certain metal, all right, and they say this metal right now is going to cost, let's say they devalue it. It was costing maybe $100 before, all right? And now they say this metal is going to be going at $1. Does that law change the intrinsic nature? Can it make the gold, or let's say gold or aluminum, change to sand and water? It doesn't. The nature of that metal is still going to be what it is. So it can't change. So in that fact, that is real money. But if a government can make a law, let's say, for example, you have a $100 note right now, and they say the $100 note is now $1. Automatically, if you go to buy something at a store and you give somebody $100, he's going to say the $100 is now $1 because of the law that the government said. Then that is not real money. Does it make sense? So that's my explanation for it. So like I've said before, seed has nothing to do, all right, with money. So I'm going to show you the next definition of seed from the Bible, because seed has only two meanings in the Bible. One, it's a crop or a seed that you plant and a crop grows out of it. The next definition of seed means that seed means let's say a progeny of you. Progeny in the sense that a son or daughter that you give birth to. All right. So let me show you that. So the next portion of the Bible that I present to you to show you that seed has nothing to do with money, and that seed means only two things in the Bible. It's either a seed that you get a crop out of or a crop grows from, or a progeny. That means your son or your daughter that you've given birth to. And the place I'm reading from is Genesis chapter number 4 from the King James Bible or your Geneva Bible. And you can read from verse 25. And it says here, and Adam knew his wife, okay? Adam knew his wife, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God said, she had appointed me another seed instead of Abel. Remember, Abel died. So you can see here that the Bible is likening a seed to a son, or a seed to a daughter. All right, another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So that goes to show you that your indoctrination centers, your so-called fake social gathering centers, actually have been lying to you when they say sow a seed. That means they're actually telling you you should sow a seed in the ground, or you should bring your son and daughter, but they equate it with money and they say that's seed. I'm trying to show you that the Bible is literal in its meaning. It's not symbolic. The Bible is not subject to any private any private interpretation. And let me show you what the Bible says about that. So where I'm reading from is King James Bible, 2 Peter. I'm reading from 2 Peter chapter number 1. And I'm reading from verse 20. Let me make sure that's the right place. Yes, 2 Peter chapter number 1. All right. King James Bible, your Geneva Bible. And I say, and I read from verse 20, which says, knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scripture is of any private interpretation. So the subject here, it's private interpretation. That means the Bible is not subject to anybody's private interpretation to say this is what it actually means. The Bible is literal. So what's the best way I can explain it? So if you wrote a letter to someone you loved, okay, and you were trying to explain your love for the person or whatsoever, would you be writing it in any cryptic kind of way that's difficult for the person that you love to understand? If you want the person to understand you, no, you wouldn't. You would make it very, very literal. All right. So that's what the Bible is. It's literal. It's not symbolic. So somebody can just wake up and say your money is your seed. He's subjecting it to a private interpretation of what it's not. All right. So let's dive into something else, because we are trying to show you the tricks of the trade when it comes to how the Vatican is using the 501c3, all right, to control churches, to control you. Because like I've said, in order for you to have someone's attention, to control, or let's say in order for you to control a person, you have to control how they think. Because how you think turns into words, and your words turns into actions. So before that, we want to visit the subject, because we're still in a transvestigation. I was saying I'm going to make it very difficult for anybody who's watching these particular videos to be able to fast forward, all right, and say, oh, we just want to fast forward to the transvestigation part. We don't care about what this fellow is saying. He talks way too much. Because somebody actually tells me that I talk way too much. But I'm like, well, this is a video, and videos don't get to the subject matter from the start of the video, do they? If you go through a movie, because everybody watches a movie, You don't just tell the guy, just hurry up and act and show me what the mystery is about in the movie, right? But here's how brainwashed people are. People can sit through long, ridiculous movies. But here I'm trying to pass some information, something that I think may help you. And they're saying I should get to the meat of the bones real quick, and then they just fast forward, all right, to the transgender part. It's going to be very difficult in this video for you to do that, because right now I'm going to take a break. I'm going to jump into a transvestigation, and then I'm going to come back and talk some more. All right, so let's go. So the subject is Carl Lentz, like I said, and Levi Levi Lusko, right? Or Lusko, sorry, Levi Lusko. And I'm at the website of Carl Lentz here, and they say Carl and Laura Lentz, lead pastors. They say Carl Pastors Hillsong New NYC, a church in the heart of Manhattan that has a passion to serve the city and make an impact worldwide. So here is Carl Lentz. So let's take a good look at what Carl Lentz looks like, all right? And here is Pastor Carl Lentz, and he's saying X-Code Revival, okay? Now, it's so saddening at this point in time that we have a transgender pastor. This is how the Vatican has ridiculed what they call Christianity, because I don't call it Christianity. They have ridiculed Christianity to such a point that they can actually have the guts to put up a transgender pastor in front of you. So we're going to do a transvestigation on Carl Lentz right now, starting with this picture. But before I go into this picture, let me just show you from the Bible why being a transgender, it's something that God takes very, very seriously. Because people have to understand that when it comes to the Bible, there's a difference between a sin and an abomination. I don't have the time to get into too much on this particular video, because I don't want to make the video overly too long. When you commit a sin under the doctrine of, let's say, the biblical doctrine or the laws or the commandments of Moses, you could be forgiven your sin by an offering, a blood sacrifice, all right, that you brought to the priest slaughtered, or the yearly sacrifice which the priest would do every year to ask for forgiveness for the sins of the children of Israel, in which they would bring him two goats. He would slaughter one, and then the other goat he would lay his hands upon and lay all the sins of that goat of Israel on that goat, and then a strong man, they will hand over the goat or sheep to a very strong man, and the man would lead the goat into the wilderness and let the goat go away, and then all the sins of Israel would be cast away. So there's a difference between a sin and an abomination. A sin was something that you could be forgiven of from. Abomination was something that there was no forgiveness. You had to be killed there and then, okay? Because it was something that should not even be thought of. So, for example, what was an abomination? Abomination would be something like bestiality. Another abomination would be something like someone being a transgender, okay? But in today's society, it is accepted. You know, the Vatican has worked on the minds of people. They've been so brainwashed, they accept it. But if you say you believe in God, it's something that you should not do. Transgenderism is for people who don't actually say they believe, because according to this Bible, they are not to be allowed into the congregation. So that's what I'm going to show you right now, to show you that this is one of the greatest abominations of all time, that we have transgendered pastors. And in the first place, like I said, you shouldn't be listening to any pastors. I'm going to show you that today. And let me just go into that quick to show you that this is an abomination in itself and what the Bible actually says. So, like I said, I was going to make it very difficult for anybody to know where the transvestigation starts and where it ends. They have to sit through the whole video. So just like I said here, I'm talking about that it's an abomination, all right? I'm reading from Deuteronomy chapter number 23. I'm reading in the King James Bible or your Geneva Bible. I'm reading from Deuteronomy chapter 23, and I'm reading from verse 1. It says, "He that is wounded in the stones or hath his privy member cut off shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Can you see that? I did not see it. Say it. The Bible said it. He that is wounded in the stones. Stones means what? Anybody who has his stones cut off, all right? Or his private member cut off. Private member cut off. What's a woman's private member? Her breast. What's a man's private member? His what? His genitals, right? If he or she cut off, they shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. I didn't see that. So Carl Lentz right here, right, is actually transgendered. And as you can look by this picture, all right, I'm just going to show you a few tips of the picture. Well, like I said, you guys will know when the transvestigation starts or ends. I'm not going to show you. I just told you something that I wasn't going to do. So let me go back to what I was trying to say. I'm going to show you another Bible portion now that talks about that transgenders is an abomination, okay? Especially for someone who says he's actually preaching the gospel. You couldn't be. He says you should not be accepted into the congregation of the Lord. Let me show you another portion. So the portion I'm reading from this time happens to be Deuteronomy chapter number 22 in your King James Bible or your Geneva Bible. And I'm reading from verse 5. It says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so an abomination unto the Lord." So now, when a lot of people read this stuff, you know, they try to say, somebody might say, okay, I'm a female, I shouldn't be wearing pants because pants are something a man should wear. But that's not what it's talking about, all right? What it's talking about here is that you're wearing those clothes to deceive a man into thinking you're a woman, or a man is wearing female clothes, all right, and trying to make another man think that he's a woman, which transgenders are doing. So that's what it's talking about here. Because that is an abomination. Because it says here the chief operative word here is pertaineth. Pertaineth unto a man. Pertaineth. That means trying to deceive someone that you're the opposite sex when you're not. That's what it means. So Mr. Carl Lentz here, or let's say I'll call him Miss Carl Lentz for now. Does this look to you like a man? Okay. So should I start the transvestigation here? I'm about to say something. What do you guys notice about this dude right here? Because you can know, or this female right here, because you can know the body, notice the body changes, right? Why is the body changing this rapidly? It's because this female is taking testosterone. He's overdosed on it, overloaded on it. But you can see already here that the breast right here, like I said, a female's breast muscles are not designed to have mass like a man. They are designed to carry breast and fatty tissue. Okay? So when this person, as you can see right here on this particular picture, the left breast here doesn't look the same like the right. It's asymmetrical. It's not symmetrical. A man's chest is asymmetrical. Why is that? Women's chests are asymmetrical and men's chests are symmetrical. The reason being, a woman's breast, one is always bigger than the other. That's the reason for the asymmetry. All right. In a man's chest, because a man is not designed like a man is not designed to carry breast tissue. Okay. So the chests are symmetrical. So what you first notice on this dude's chest right here is that they are not symmetrical. Just by looking at the breast muscles under this breast, it's very, very apparent here in this picture, as you can see. But in this particular picture, and this other picture on my left, if you follow my mouse, it's very, very apparent that there is something wrong with the breast muscles or the chest muscles. As you can see, they are melting into the chest, all right? Melting into the chest. They're not different. They're not, different. The chest muscle is not different from the chest muscles or the breast or the abdominal muscles under here, as you can see. They're all melted into, all right? That's the first thing you notice. But we're still on the subject of transvestigation, but we're not going to finish the transvestigation here because, like I said, I'm going to make it very difficult for those who come to this channel and expect that they are getting to a transgender channel. It's not a transgender channel, all right? So we have some more to talk about this picture, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let's go into something else we wanted to talk about to show you the tricks for you to be able to know that all these pastors, your televangelists that you see are all frauds. Okay, let's go. So I've given you clue number one. So when you hear somebody say, I'm a man of God, automatically you should know that this person is telling you a lie. That's clue number one in how to spot fake people who call themselves believers and try to preach to you in the name of God. They tell you, I'm a man of God. You should run away from that. Never ever call anybody a man of God. We are all children of the Most High if you believe in Yehoshua. Okay? The next thing that they say is, like I've already told you, that the second thing, I should have said that was the first, but I'll tell you the second thing. If they say sow a seed, I've just shown you that a seed is a plant that you put in the ground to grow, or your child or son or daughter that you give birth, which means your progeny. So when you hear them say sow a seed for your man of God, that's two statements that are very, very wrong. Automatically you should know that this person is a fraud. The next thing that you have to know, if this person tells you, I'm an apostle. Now, according to the Bible, if you've never studied your Bible, you should know that anybody who called themselves apostle was somebody who lived physically with Yehoshua when he was in the earth. All the apostles, the 12 disciples, were apostles. The only other apostle who did not meet Yehoshua physically, but which God, which Yehoshua actually did appear to him, was the apostle Paul. So if anybody tells you I'm an apostle, you should know that he's a fraud. That's another step that you have to know. Okay. So and one thing that you also have to know about how these frauds operate, who call themselves pastors, is that they also have a congregation or a church building. So the next thing I'm going to show you is that God himself, all right, makes you understand that you, the person, you, a human being, are his church and not a church building. So that's the next thing I'm going to show you right now. Now, before I read this particular portion of the King James Bible or the Geneva Bible, you have to understand that the greatest temple which people had been worshiping, which God had commanded that, should be built and that his name would abide in, was destroyed. The temple in Jerusalem, Israel. So now the question now remains, if God had destroyed or allowed to be destroyed the greatest church, because that temple is a church, why should people be still going into buildings to worship God and belong to a named congregation? All right? Because you have to remember, most people will say that how these fake frauds and pastors who are trained by the Vatican and all those Freemasonic people, is that they will tell you that they are building God's church. But the Bible clearly says that God himself, Yehoshua, said, all right, I will build my church. He didn't say that they should do it. He said he will do it. All right? So right there and then you know there are frauds, but because people don't actually study their Bibles to see, all right, they still go and maintain this system of indoctrination in social gatherings, wearing your best clothes and listening to some good music and some stuff that will tingle your ears, but no truth at all. So let me show you where God says, I will build my church. He didn't tell the pastors, those frauds, or the Pope to do it. Let me show you that. So I'm reading from the King James Bible or Geneva Bible. I'm reading from Matthew chapter number 16, okay? And I'm reading from verse 8. And I'm not going to read the whole part because I just want to focus on what really matters. It says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against this. Now, I'm not reading everything. What I want you to notice in this verse, it says that he said he will build his church. And who are the church? That's a question that we're going to answer. But before we answer, let's jump into some transvestigation. As I'm saying now, this is going to be how the videos are going to be made. You have to sit through the whole video to know where the transvestigation starts and where it ends, because you may not know where it starts and where it ends if you try to fast forward till the end. So here is Pastor Levi Lusko. He pastors his church, and you can find out the name, but you would just by looking up Pastor Levi Lusko, you would know which social gathering that he champions over. Because I don't call these people pastors. They're all frauds and deceivers. Now, what I want you to know is about Levi Lusko is that the way he stands. Why does this dude stand this way? It's because he has hips and he has an hourglass figure. The reason why he stands with his feet apart, if you notice, his wife stands with, because a woman usually doesn't stand with her feet apart, because it makes the balance much more unstable. All right. The reason why this thing is faking its stance, because it knows that it's a transgendered male, that it's born female. So the stance here is to hide the fact of the wide hips. You're going to be showing you a lot of pictures that this is always the way he stands or she stands, because she knows it's female. So the stance is one of the tricks of the trade right here, trying to hide the fact that it has wide hips. As you can see, there's an hourglass figure right here. Okay, so that's just what I wanted to show you first, and then we move on into some more talk about explaining that the church, when the Bible uses the word church, that is actually referring to you, a physical human being, not some church building which you have been faked into going, which is a social gathering where you listen to some good music that makes you feel good, but absolutely no truth, and the pastor just whines, or the so-called chief indoctrinator whines on top of that pulpit and takes your money and your seed and your offerings and your tithes. We're going to show you all the tricks of the trades, which is people do that. If you have eyes and you have ears and you have a brain, then you might learn something. If not, just keep getting indoctrinated. All right, let's go. So we've already seen this part in which you have to actually see that Yehoshua says, I will build my church. Okay, so let me go into the next portion that I wanted to read to show you that you are the church, not a physical building or a congregation, as they say. So the place I'm reading from this time around happens to be 1 Corinthians chapter number 3. All right, and it says here from verse 16, know ye not, okay, know ye not that you are the temple of God. I'm not going to read any further than that. That's the portion that matters. Know you not that you are the temple of God. And I skip into verse number 17. Let's say which other place am I reading from? Let me find the next portion that I wanted to read, but I want you to notice that first, that it says, know you not that you are the temple of God. You are the church. You, that physical person, that human being, are the church, not the congregation that you go to and your pastor feeds you lies and takes your money, your hard-earned money that you've worked for. Okay? So the next portion that I read happens to be 1 Corinthians chapter number 6 from the King James Bible, the Geneva Bible. You can read from verse 19. It says, what? Know you not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God? Do you see that? So you are the temple. You are the building. You are the church, not the congregation that you go to, or your social gathering that has a particular name, like Baptist Revival or whatever the name might be. You are the church. Let me show you another portion. So in the next portion I'm reading from happens to be 1 Corinthians chapter number 3 from the King James Bible, the Geneva Bible. You can read from verse 9. It says here, you are God's building. You, whatever your name is, you are the building, not the church or the so-called temple that you go to and you kid yourselves, you put on your clothes and you go on Sunday with your children and you sit and act and all be nice and listen to that good music and the false preaching, and then you give some money and you think it's your seed. I've already shown you that. These are tips for knowing that your pastors are frauds. Your indoctrination masters are frauds. All right. So that's the third thing that we've talked about, to make you understand that you are God's building, not the church that you go to. All right. So let's keep reading. There's one more chapter that I have to show you before I go. Just one more. So the next chapter, before I finish up on that, making you understand the third trick, that the third way to spot a fraud who tells you that he's preaching God's name to you, is that you are God's building. You are the church and not a building, a physical building that you go to. So I'm reading from Hebrews chapter number 9. I'm reading from the King James Bible or Geneva Bible. You can read from verse 11. It says, but Christ being come as a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. So he's saying, because the priest that existed in the time of the Old Testament had to have a tabernacle, a physical tabernacle, or a building in which they had to operate from. He's saying that Christ's coming, all right, was not after the form of those priests, because he was coming over to see over a tabernacle that was not made with hands. Human beings are not made with hands. Nobody can make a human being with hands or build them like a building. So that's what he's saying here, that this tabernacle that he's overseeing is not made with hands. That is to say, not of this building. So that's the third thing you have to notice about these frauds. So I've given you the first three already, that they're talking about seeds, okay? They're going to be saying that there are pastors or apostles or whatever the name might be, but we are all children of the Most High. And the third tip right here that you should spot these frauds is that you're going to a church building. Once you know that, then you know that you are not actually believing in what you say you do. So let me show you something else. Let's keep moving. Well, I said let's keep moving, but I'm jumping right into a transvestigation. Like I said, I'm going to make it difficult for anybody to fast forward, all right, and try to get to the transgender or transvestigation part of the video, because the channel is not about transgenders, even though we feature a lot of them. I'm going to be making it so difficult. So if you're on here trying to just get at the transgenders, you're going to be sorely disappointed. All right. So here, another thing that we have to take a look at, Carl Lentz. All right. Now, as usual, if you've watched the beginning part of the video, is that a woman's elbows always follows the contours of the body. That's because the shoulders of a woman, right, are not as wide as a man. They're shorter. Okay. So if you notice with Carl Lentz right here, these shoulders are not sticking outside their body. They are following the contours, as you can see right here. These shoulders right here are not sticking out. And another thing you also have to notice, besides the fact that I've talked about the asymmetrical nature of his chest, or chest as the case might be, of his pec muscles, he also has the curves of the pecs. You already guys know that the cause of the pecs is that a female's pecs muscles are not designed to be massive like a man, because they're not designed, they're designed more like they're designed to carry breast tissue and milk. With Carl Lentz, if you notice also, besides the fact that the shoulders or the arms are following the contours of the body, you also have to notice that the elbows are aligning with the female indentation, which is the waist of a female, which is above the navel. So you can see right here Carl Lentz, his elbows are aligned with that female indentation. All right, showing you that Carl Lentz is a woman and not a man, and he's a Vatican deception. All right, the hip Vatican deception of the New Age movement. And like I've said before, anybody you see on TV, if you're going to a church, I'm still showing you tricks, right? The tips now, to show you that all your pastors are frauds. So let's go back and we'll come back to this picture later, all right? So another tip that I have to show you that your pastors are fraud on, we are number 4 right now, is that these pastors tell you that they collect tithes and offerings and that it's meant to go to the upkeep of the church, right? They have no work. They're not working. Most of them are just pastors. They just sit and come in on Sundays, preach, and get some money from you guys, and they have the best cars, the best houses, dress in the finest designers, and meanwhile the young lady or woman or the widow or the man right there don't even have food to eat. You can imagine. So I'm going to show you that Paul as an apostle gave an example that they can't just say that there are apostles or men of God, as the case may be, that they were working with their hands. They had real jobs, all right? They had real jobs. So where I'm reading from is chapter number 18 in the Acts of the Apostles. Chapter number 18, your King James Bible or your Geneva Bible. And I read from verse 1 of chapter number 18, and it says, "After these things Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth, and found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, all right, lately come from Italy, with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart." The right word here would be Hebrews, so I'm going to read it right. "Because that Claudius had commanded all Hebrews to depart from Rome, and came unto them. And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers." So Paul was a tent maker. Can you hear? Do you understand that? He was working by craft. He was a tent maker. So one of the tricks, the fourth one you have to see, is that the so-called fraudsters who are up there collecting your money under their 501c3 organization, right? World Council of Churches, which is led by the Vatican, or the Council of Churches, which they are directly or indirectly affiliated with, are frauds. They have no truth in them, all right? So they have no work. So this is here to show you an example that Paul the apostle was working. He was by craft, by their occupation, as he said. By their occupation, they were tent makers. He was a tent maker, all right? So let's go on further. So transvestigation, as you can see right here, the Carl Lentz is spreading from where you have that female indentation downwards. Can you see that spread right there? I want you to notice. He's spreading downwards, spreading downwards, spreading downwards, spreading downwards, showing you the Carl Lentz, Pastor Carl Lentz. The fraud is actually a female. Some more pictures. And here is Carl Lentz with his so-called wife, all right? If you notice, like I've said before, if you're trying to hug someone or hold someone, okay, it is natural for your hands to find the narrowest point in the body for you to hang on to. So if a man and a woman are walking side by side, the female is going to put her hands around the narrowest point in the male counterpart that she's working with. And it's always going to be the male waist, which is always below the navel, all right? A female waist is above the navel. So you can see right here that his wife is trying to find the narrowest point in Carl Lentz's body. And that narrowest point right there is above Carl Lentz's navel. That's why the arm is going right around there. Showing you, you can see the elbow right here. That's Carl Lentz's elbow. And that's where the wife's hand is around that point there, which is the female waist. Showing you that Carl Lentz is a woman. So, like I said, you guys will know when the transvestigation starts and when it ends. So let's go further. So one other portion that I didn't show you to show you that, you know, these so-called fraudsters do not work, and how to spot them is that they do not work. When the Bible says that as somebody who says you're a believer, you just can't say that you have a congregation and that's what you're doing. You have to actually have real work. So I'm reading here from 1 Corinthians chapter number 1, and I'm reading from verse 12. All right. Sorry, I'm reading from Corinthians chapter number 4. I'm reading from verse 12. 1 Corinthians chapter number 4, verse 12 from the King James Bible or Geneva Bible says, and labor working with our hands. That is what Paul was saying, that they were laboring, working with their own hands. That means they had real careers. He had a real career and a real job. He wasn't just an apostle. Okay? That's one of the tricks. So we go on to the step number 5 on how to spot all these frauds and to know if you're being defrauded yourself, that you don't have an understanding of what you actually say you mean. Okay? So I pick a picture of Levi Lusko. Levi here say he's praying, but he forgot to tell us that he has hips, that he can be in the congregation of God Almighty as I've shown you. So she's a total fraud. As you can see right here, Levi Lusko is spreading. It's spreading all the way down, and she is faking that stance again, keeping his feet or his feet apart to hide the wide hips that he has, which is the same as the hips of his wife, showing you that Levi Lusko is a woman. Another picture. And here is Levi Lusko, all right, sitting with his wife. I don't know what the name of his wife, I think it's Julianne or something. You guys can look it up. As you can see right here, now you have to understand that if you're a woman, your arms are always going to follow the contours of the body. And as a result of that, from the elbows down, the arms of a woman spreads as it's following her hips. Okay? So if you're a woman, your arms are never going to be straight. You can make this example in your mirror. Just pick up your hand, all right, and raise it up towards your face and try to keep it at shoulder length. You're going to notice from the elbows out that your arms are going to angle out. But if you're a man and you did that, your arms would be straight. So with Levi Lusko sitting like this, you can see how angled those elbows really show, because these are the elbows of a female. Levi Lusko is a woman. All right, some more pictures for you. So I get back to talking about how to spot, to know that your pastor is a fraud. One thing they all of them seem to agree. They all agree is that the so-called white people you find in the land of Israel today, who are actually Vatican bred, are the children of Israel. Okay? But I want to show you that they're actually not correct, because if you read from Amos, I'm reading from the book of Amos right here. I'm reading from chapter number 9, and I'm reading from verse 7. It says, "Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel?" God is likening the children of Israel to Ethiopians. And Ethiopians today are still black with nappy hair. So if you find that you're listening to a pastor who agrees or who talks about in any certain way or form about the prophecies of the Bible and says that it concerns those people who are today in the land of Israel in the year 2017 on the 11th of August, as of this date, you should know you're dealing with a fraud. You should not be listening to that guy, because like I said, we are all children of God. You don't need a pastor. You don't need an apostle like Apostle Laura Lee. Just pick up your Bible and study it. Because God said, I will build my church. That means he's the one responsible. If you study, he will teach you. He will build you. That's all I can say. So let's keep going. Now, before I keep going, you have to understand that when you study the Bible, it's talking about Hebrews and not Jews. So since it was translated, okay, and at the time of translation, the children of Israel didn't exist anymore in the land of Israel. There were people who were being led by the 5 books of Moses called the Torah, who now attributed themselves to be Jews. That's where the word comes from, Jews. Jews are not Hebrews, okay? So if you find out that you're in a gathering, a social gathering as I call it, or indoctrination center, and you find out that these people are being, some people call themselves Hebrews or Hebrew Israelites. Now, the funny thing about being a Hebrew Israelite, because like I've said before, you need to watch the Kevin Bacon video to really understand the reason behind the whole Hebrew Israelite ideology. Is that the Vatican is trying to make people who are being awake to understanding that blacks are the natives of all land, especially in the Americas, to have the ideology that they are not natives. So if they can make them believe that they're African Americans, they have to make them believe they are Hebrew Israelites, but never ever believe that there are black Americans, black aboriginal people from the Americas. So now when you meet these so-called Hebrew Israelites, they tell you they're Hebrew Israelites. But for you to be a Hebrew Israelite, you needed to have a genealogy book. You needed to be able to trace your genealogy to your great forefathers. If you ask any of these so-called Hebrew Israelites who their great forefathers were, great grandfathers, right? That means like forefathers, 4 great grandfathers before their father, they would have no clue. Just ask any Hebrew Israelite, show me your genealogy book. Can you trace your lineage down to your 4th great grandfather in your generation? They probably can't tell you that. And then the sad thing they're going to say is like the curses in the book of, I think, Deuteronomy chapter 28 or chapter 29 defines who I am. That is such ridiculous nonsense, right? Because the only way you could be defined as a Hebrew was for you to be able to trace your genealogy. So, for example, when in the book of Matthew, when God, they start tracing the genealogy of Yehoshua, all right, they tell you his genealogy right from Abraham down to who was the father before him in Joseph or Mary. But these fake Hebrew Israelites out here can't do that. So first of all, I want to show you why they can't do that. So for example, now here, I'm reading from the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is going to trace his genealogy, all right? Okay? To show you that he was of Israel, right? He says here, now these were those sealed with Nehemiah the Tishat, the son of Hakaliah, and Zedekiah, all right? Can you see that? So this is how Nehemiah traces. If you read this whole portion in Nehemiah chapter 10, he traces his lineage to show you that he was a priest, because the priest had a lineage, all right, that he was Hebrew. Let me show you another genealogy tracing so you can understand that better. So an example of a genealogy tracing now here has to do with King David. It's going to show you how David could relate who his forefathers down to his own tribe, of which Jesse was from, right? Remember, which tribe was David from? Which tribe was David from? Let's find out. So now, to show you that David was of the tribe of Judah, he could trace his genealogy. You can read the book of Ruth. You can read from chapter number 1. I'm reading actually. I'm just going to skip over a little bit just to show you how these Hebrew Israelites are so confused. They can't trace their genealogy. All right. If you ask them who was your great forefather 2 or 4 generations before you, they don't know their name, and they claim he's Hebrew. To show you that the whole Hebrew thing is a fraud. Now, if you're reading from King James or Geneva Bible, I'm reading from Ruth chapter number 1, and it says here now, now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Shilon. All right. So what happened was Naomi was was married to Elimelech and had 2 sons, and they went into a country, all right, a country of Moab, and from there Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died and left her with 2 sons. And Naomi took wives of the children of Moab, all right, for her 2 sons. One was called Orpah, and the other was called Ruth. Okay, Ruth happens to be a great-grandmother of David. So let's read further into the story to continue to show you what's going on here. So I pick up another picture of Carl Lentz, and with the most wicked woman in the world. I call him the most wicked woman in the world, Oprah Winfrey, because she has infected so many lives with her virus from the Vatican. All right, she's destroyed so many lives with her false theologies and lies. Because as a child, I grew up watching Oprah before I knew anybody else. So if not for the fact that my mind was sharp, my life would have been destroyed by looking at this wicked woman here, Oprah. But as you can see right here, starting with Oprah, because remember I told you guys that I'm going to give you a 4-for-1 today, that you're going to find out if Oprah is male or female today, because you have a lot of fake channels out there telling you that Oprah is actually male. But as you can see right here, that the widest, that where Oprah is putting her hands on are at her waist level. It's on her waist, and the waist of Oprah is just above her navel, and as you can see, it's just right falling into line with where her chest cavity, or let's say her ribs, are. And those are her hands. As you can see, she has an arch in her back from how she's placing those hands right there, and she's curving, and you can see that she is a woman. Arch in the back, hands are just right there where the waist is. Now with Carl Lentz, fake Pastor Carl Lentz, as you can see, already shown you in the other picture with his wife or her wife, that his wife was trying to find the narrowest point in her body, which is always the female waist, which is above the navel. And it's the same thing that Oprah Winfrey is doing right now, trying to find the narrowest point in Carl Lentz's body. And those arms right there are going right where it is, the arch in the back, the female waist above the navel, because Carl Lentz is a fake man, is a woman. And here is Oprah with them. That's why you can't make no role models of anybody you see on TV, because as I said before, anybody you see on TV is a stooge of Vatican, is a Vatican stooge. There's nothing real on TV. There's nothing, absolutely nothing real that you watch on TV, because even if it's a real event, by the time it gets televised, that event has been shaped, has been modified, has been made to fit into the Vatican's ideology or whatever they want to tell you that it should fit into. So that's why there's nothing real on TV, and you can't trust anybody that you see on TV, because they are not working your own best interest. As you can see right here, right? Carl Lentz is a woman, and so is Oprah Winfrey. So next picture. So as we read from the story, Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was trying to go back into the country of Judah, all right, or Moab, and she had taken 2 sons or 2 daughters for her sons, and her sons also died. So they say here that Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a mighty man of wealth, kinsman of her husband. Husband was from the tribe of Judah, so the kinsman automatically would be from the tribe of Judah, and his name was Boaz. Let's read further into the story to see how we trace the lineage of David now, in which the Hebrew Israelites, the fake Hebrew Israelites, have believed who can do it. So the story now continues from the book of Ruth. We are reading from chapter 4. That so Boaz took his daughter's wife, his son's wife who had died, and gave to his kinsman whose name was Boaz, right? So if you can read into the story, you will see here that it says, let me actually say, so Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee to stay without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thy child age, for thy daughter-in-law which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons had born unto him. And Naomi took the child and laid in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, This is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. So Obed meant a son born to Naomi. That's the interpretation. His father, he is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now he says, now these are the generations of Phares, okay? So it's trying to trace for you to see how the generations led to David, all right, down from the children of Judah, because Phares was a son of Judah, the tribe of Judah. He says here, Phares begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. So now, the question now is to the Hebrew Israelite. Who is your great forefather? Can you trace him down to one of the great forefathers in any tribe of Israel that you say you're from? I beg to have that answer. I think there is none. So let me show you that what the Bible calls us, the Bible doesn't, that God doesn't take a look at, he doesn't recognize ethnicity anymore. As long as you believe in Yehoshua, you are of God. You are a Hebrew in his eyes. Okay, so let's go. So we're still on the tricks of showing you that if you, another tip was that the fact that I was trying to explain that if you go to any indoctrination center, just how to spot frauds that are called pastors, all right, and they tell you that the so-called children of Israel or are the fake white Jews that you find in the land of Israel today, then you should know that you're actually listening to a fraud. So I talked about the fact that the Hebrew Israelites today can't even trace their genealogy down, and they say that they are from Israel and they are Hebrews, even though we know for a fact that the Hebrews were black people with nappy hair, as Ethiopians I have shown you earlier in this book, in this video. So now what I'm trying to show you is the fact that as long as you believe in Yehoshua, and I'm going to show you after this why I call the name Yehoshua. That's going to be another tip, that the so-called people who minister to you minister in the name of Jesus. His name was never Jesus. And as I've said before, if your name happens to be Shuayu, which is Chinese meaning water, if you come to the United States of America, you're always going to answer Shuayu. Your passport bears the name Shuayu. It's not going to say Waters. If you were Chinese and you came to America and someone called you Waters, you would not answer, because that would not be your name. All right? So when people say his name is Jesus, I'm going to show you that even the translators of the Bible, all right, who were translating the Bible, knew for a fact that his name wasn't Jesus. Because you have to understand that Jesus is from the Greek word, is it Iosus, if I'm trying to pronounce it right, Iosus. There was no such thing as a letter J in the Greek alphabet, neither was there a letter J in the Hebrew, from which you have the name Yehoshua. And God was Hebrew. So if he was around in his day, his parents, his siblings, his friends would have called him Yehoshua and not Jesus. So I've been calling on a fake God all this while, which happens to be a fake white painting of Caesar Borgia calling Jesus. That's not Yehoshua. So all the fake people who will come as the so-called Antichrist, as the Bible say, who say they come in the name of Jesus, they will never say they come in the name of Yehoshua, because they've built up the fake name of Jesus for a very, very long time. So you have to get away from that name Jesus. It's not Jesus, it's Yehoshua. And I'm going to show you that in a while. But before that, let's get back into the subject of the Hebrew Israelites to show you that these guys don't even know what they're talking about. Because the Bible clearly says here that if anybody believes in Yehoshua, all right, who has the faith of Abraham, that he is Hebrew. So I'm reading here from Galatians. I'm reading from chapter number 3. And it's saying, I'm reading from verse number 7. You can read from the King James Version or so. It says, "Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the heathen." Who are the heathen? The heathen are not Hebrews. "Through faith, preached before the gospel unto Abraham, saying, In thee shall all nations be blessed." So the question you have to ask here, right, if you're reading this, was Abraham a Hebrew? No. The Bible clearly says that Abraham was heathen. All right? It's only the children of Jacob or Jacob that became Israel. Abraham was not. So the Bible clearly shows you here. All right? If you read again, let me just read it again. Sorry about that. It says, "Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham." Children of Abraham. Was Jacob in Abraham? Yes, he was a child of Abraham. He was blessed. Was Esau also a child of Abraham? Yes, he was also blessed. So what does it say? "And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the heathen through faith, preached before the gospel unto Abraham, saying, In thee shall all nations be blessed." Now let me show you another thing, that you have to understand, that God does not look at the ethnicity anymore, but only at the belief in Yehoshua. So some transvestigation. We can do some transvestigation on Levi Lusko right now. And so as you can see here from this picture, if you're looking, this is Levi Lusko and her wife. We call her for now. As usual, as the same case was with Carl Lentz, the wife is trying to find the narrowest point in Levi Lusko's body. And what does he find? He finds his waist, which is above the navel, because the navel is around here, which is always going to be just slightly below the female rib cage. And this is where the wife of Levi Lusko's hands falls around the narrowest point, as you can see right there above the navel, where you have the arch in the back, where the elbows are aligning with, showing you that Levi Lusko, this fraud of a pastor, this Vatican agent, is a woman. So like I said, I'm just gonna try to make you very, very confused on where to know where the transvestigation starts and ends. So you have to sit through the whole video instead of just fast forwarding, for those folks who likes fast forwarding to the transgender part and skipping everything else. So that's how the videos are gonna be made. And so let's continue back with the subject that I was gonna talk about, with showing you from the Bible that being Hebrew has nothing to do with the color of your skin. All right, has nothing to do at all. If you don't believe in Yehoshua and all that nonsense about Hebrews, even though we know they were black, doesn't count in God's eyes. So let's keep going. So I picked up another picture, still transvestigating Levi Lusko, Pastor Levi Lusko, and here they are in their so-called church, and the wife is still trying to do the same thing, find the narrowest point of Levi Lusko's body, and is still above the navel of Levi Lusko. Narrowest point right there. See where the arm's at, and see how the elbows align with that? Because Levi Lusko, a fake fraud from the Vatican, New Age movement, preaching Christianity, which is false as well, is a woman, is not a man. All right? So if you're attending this church, know right here and then you're listening to a fraud. So let's go further. So I'm reading now from King James or Geneva Bible. I'm reading from Romans chapter number 2, and I'm reading from verse 28 to show you that whole thing about, your appearance, or that you can associate yourself to be a Hebrew Israelite without believing in Yehoshua is actually a fraud. There is no such thing as Hebrew Israelites. As long as you believe in Yehoshua, which I'll come to show you that his name is Yehoshua in a second, that then God recognizes you as Hebrew. So I'm reading from Romans chapter 2, and he says here, and I'm reading from verse number 28 in Romans chapter number 2, King James of Geneva Bible. It says, for he is not a Hebrew. The word there in the Bible is Hebrew, shouldn't be interpreted Jew. It said, for he is not a Hebrew, which is one outwardly. That means your outward appearance of the so-called, how the real Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews looked like, which were black people with nappy hair, dark skin. It says here, which is one outward. That means that appearance doesn't count. Neither is that circumcision. Circumcision, because the ancient Hebrews had to be circumcised, right? Which is outward in the flesh. So let me read it again. So because I was talking while reading, so you can actually understand. It says, for he is not a Hebrew, which is one outwardly. Neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Hebrew, which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of man, but of God. So now the question now remains. So if God had shown all this, all right, used the Hebrew people in the Bible, she shows so much of his grace and mercy and love and forgiveness, why did the Hebrew ethnicity disappear? Why did God make it disappear? Why was it no longer that he wasn't looking at the Hebrews, but he was looking at the whole world? He wanted everybody now to be a Hebrew according to his own definition by believing in Yehoshua. Let me show you that. So to show you why God discarded, doesn't care about the so-called people who can say they are Hebrew Israelites, and that only people who believe in Yehoshua. I'm going to show you why the name is Yehoshua, not Jesus, also, so you can understand that. So I'm reading from 1 Corinthians chapter number 10. I'm actually reading from verse 1. It's going to be a long read, so I'm going to read pretty quick, but I'm getting to the subject point of the reason why I'm reading as I'm reading along. So it says here from verse 1, King James Bible or Geneva Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 from verse 1, it says, moreover, brethren, see how the Bible calls people brethren. He doesn't call them Christians. He refers to them as brothers, believers in Yehoshua, okay? He doesn't call them Christians. So you should never, ever bear the word. So that's the reason why I'm saying you're not a Christian. Don't be put in that class by the Vatican, because the Vatican came up with that word Christian, okay? It says, moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant that how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, right? All the great forefathers were baptized. That means Israel, that because that's where you have the nation of Israel from the time of Moses, okay? So, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Yehoshua. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Remember how God said that a certain generation will not get into the promised land because of their disbelief, and most of them died in the wilderness, and God caused them to go around the wilderness all around and instead of into the promised land directly because of their unbelief, and most of them died. So that's what he's saying. He's saying, now these things, now here's the point that I want you to take note. He said, now these things, that means the whole idea of being Hebrew, all right? That is what it's saying here. He said, now these things where are examples, all right? So the whole Hebrew ideology, the whole Hebrew nation was an example. That's what the Hebrews were for, and examples to us, all right, on the type of God that we would have in Yehoshua. So that's why God doesn't really care about either your skin color or your ethnicity, as long as you don't believe in Yehoshua. Even though we know for a fact that the Hebrews were black, that was an example unto us, so we would know, all right, to identify the frauds. Okay, so let's get back into showing you why his name is Yehoshua. So to start with, to show you that God's name is not Jesus, that it was wrongly interpreted, all right, by the people who translated the Bible for whatsoever reason. I'm trying to think of so many reasons why they did that, but I could guess by the fact that because historically it's been said that the New Testament was translated from the Greek Septuagint, and like I explained before, that when you change the name of a person or a place, then that person is not the same person it is. So for example, today you have Bruce Jenner calling himself Kathleen Jenner, all right? So because he's changed his name, his address has changed. So what's the meaning of address? So for example, if you live at a certain street, okay, they will say John so lives at so street, right? It could be any street. It could be Rose Street, Forest Street, whatever the case might be, all right? So if John changes his address, he's no longer living at Rose or Forest Street, and now lives in a Plantation Boulevard, let's say, for example, all right, or Derrick Boulevard, all right, that means automatically that you can't say that John is so stationed at this address anymore. You can't address him that way. So for example, if you change the name of a place, all right, the place no longer does exist, all right? So that is what a name change does. So if you say his name is Jesus when it's not, that means he is no longer Yehoshua. You're addressing a totally different person. So I'm going to show you that these guys knew they knew for a fact, sorry to say, that God's name was Yehoshua, but they interpreted it as Jesus, or as Jesus, as the case may be, because the letter J is just a new invention which is less than 500 years old, has never existed. So for example, when you hear Spanish people call the name Jose, there's a J there, but the J is silent because the J doesn't exist. J was the letter I. It was 500 years ago or so that the English, the white English, the Saxons, changed it into a letter J. And as you know, I've always given that history that the white Vatican, the white supremacist Vatican, which was led by, which later on with the British we came by as well, all right, from Benjamin Franklin, changed a whole lot of stuff. Okay, so reading this story now, you're going to understand that God's name, if you say you're a believer, is not Jesus, because everybody who's going to come as a fake Christ is going to bear that name Jesus. They'll never say that their name was Yehoshua in the Hebrew. So let's read here from Acts chapter number 7. We're reading from verse 45. It says here in the King James or Geneva Bible, it says, which also our fathers that came after brought in with Jesus. Now let me read from verse 44 so you can understand. He says understand perfectly what he's saying. He's saying, our fathers had the tabernacle of witness in the wilderness, okay, as he had appointed, speaking with Moses, that he should make it according to the fashion that he had seen, which also our fathers that came after brought in with Jesus. So Jesus right here is referring to Joshua, or Yeshua, which would be the proper pronunciation, right? Into the possession of the Gentiles, whom God drave out before the face of our fathers unto the days of David. So I'm going to read another particular chapter to show you that the translators knew that God's name was Joshua or Yehoshua, because they are referring it to him here as Jesus, all right? Because when you read this portion from verse 40 to 45, you clearly know that it's talking about Joshua in the Old Testament. So let me show you that. So now I'm reading from Hebrews chapter number 4, King James Bible or Geneva Bible. You can read from verse number 7. It says here, again he limited in a certain day, saying in David, today after so long a time, as it is said, today if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus, referring to Joshua, had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? So you can see right there that it's talking about Joshua as Jesus. So let's find out how the name Jesus came to be. All right? Or let's find out how the name Joshua, what the name Joshua actually means, or how it came to be, because then God's name is not Jesus. If you call him Joshua, you're actually very close to calling Yehoshua, which is actually a Hebrew name. Okay, so let's go. So Joshua is from Oshir. I'm going to show you in the Bible so you can actually see that as well. But I'm just reading from a dictionary here. It says Oshir. All right. Oshir is from Oshir that you have Joshua. I'm going to show you how the name Joshua comes by from the Bible. But let's just read this first. It says, the original name of Joshua, the son of Nun, changed by Moses. All right. Numbers chapter number 13, verse 16, which we'll read in a second. From Hoshea, help, to Joshua, help of Yahweh. So help is the same thing as Savior. All right. So you can see here that Moses changed the name of Hoshea. So when you see the name Hoshea, Osir, I don't know the other synonyms around it. It's all referring to the same Hebrew name of help. All right. And we're going to show you how the name Yahweh came to be. So let me show you that. So I'm reading first from Numbers chapter number 13. I'm reading from verse 16, King James Bible or Geneva Bible. And he says here, these are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses says, and Moses called Oshir, the son of Nun, Jehoshua, or Yehoshua, as we would say today, because the letter J is new. So Joshua was called Oshir. All right. And as you can see, we already show you here that Oshir means help. All right. So when you see the book of Hosea or whatever, it means help or savior. And as you can see, his name was Oshir, Savior, and then Moses changed the name to son of Nun, Jehoshua. So why did Moses change his name? Because he was sending them out to spy the land of Canaan. So his name was help. And so because Joshua was leading, or Oshir was leading leading the folks who went to spy the land of Canaan. So when Moses was praying, he now said, God, help us. So he changed the name of Oshir and said, God with you, God help us, Yahweh help us, right? So it means Yahweh help Oshir. So his prayer was, Yahweh, please help Oshir to spy the land of Canaan. So that's why he changed his name to Joshua, meaning help of Yahweh. Yahweh is going to help Oshir. Does it make sense? So let me explain how the name Yahweh came to be so people can actually understand that also. So I'm reading from the Hebrew Bible. It says the complete Jewish Bible. All right, they call it the complete Jewish Bible. So you need to find this particular Bible to actually read and understand. Because I also recommend, besides you reading, studying the book of the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible, I would also recommend the Hebrew or complete Jewish Bible. It's called complete Jewish Bible because it would actually give you the actual names, all right, of the people in the Bible which the Geneva Bible had changed, or the King James Bible has changed. You would see the actual rendering of the names, so you wouldn't be pronouncing the names wrongly, all right? So you would actually call their names correctly, because like I've said, you can't change the name of a person. If you change the name of a person, you are no longer the person. Just for example, I gave the example that Bruce Jenner is now identified as Kathleen Jenner, all right? So if you walked into a store, you would have to say you're looking for Kathleen Jenner, because his identity cards, his passports is going to be Kathleen Jenner. So if someone has never met him before and picked up a passport to call him, he would call him Kathleen Jenner. Does it make sense? So you can't just keep on going saying, praying in the name of Jesus. You have to pray in the actual name, or call him by his name, Yehoshua. Okay? So let me show you how the name Yahweh came to be, because that's what we are. So right here, we're in the complete Jewish Bible, and we're reading from verse number 15 of the book of Exodus. So Exodus chapter number 3, verse 15. So you can actually see, actually I'm going to read from verse 14. It said, so God said to Moshe, that means Moses, because that's actually his real name, not Moses, but Moshe. All right? Ayeh asher ayeh, and added. All right? Asher ayeh, meaning God is saying to Moses, I am. That's what is being interpreted as I am. All right? Will be what I am. So he said, God was speaking Hebrew, saying, Asher asher ayeh. All right? And added, here is what to say to the people of Israel. Ayeh I. That means Ayeh, I am. Ayeh means I am. Ayeh has sent me to you. All right? God said further to Moshe, say this to the people of Israel. Yud He Va He. Now, this is where you get the word Yahweh. I'm going to explain how you get the name word Yahweh. So when God spoke to Moses, he told him, tell the children of Israel that Yud He, right here, if you follow my mouse, Yud He Va He, the God of your fathers, of Abraham, the God of Yishak, and the God of Yaakov, has sent me to you. All right? So now the children of Israel thought the name of God was too holy. So instead of saying Yud He Va He, all right, because that's the name that God told Moses, or told Moshe, all right, to tell the children of Israel that his name was. So the children of Israel considered that the name of God was too holy to be pronounced, right? So instead of saying Yud He Va He, they changed it. They would say, if someone wanted to say that God said it, they say the name of God is too holy. We can't say Yud He Va He. So we'll just give the initials. So it's from the initials that you have YH. V here is W, because you have to understand that V and W is the same letter from way back in history. They were just changed. So V here is W. So it actually means Y. That's the first acronym for Yud. All right. The first letter for the word Yud. The next letter for the word He, which is H. All right. The next letter is W and H. So this is from where you have the word called the tetragrammaton. I think it's called is it tetragrammaton? Yeah, tetragrammaton. That's where you have it. The 4-letter word that the Hebrews call tetragrammaton. YHWH, from Yud He Va He. So from YH, right? From the first letters, right, of these 4 words, right? From these 4 words is you have the tetragrammaton, the 4-letter words YHWH. From YHWH you have Yahweh. Does it make sense? Yahweh is from that 4-letter word that you have Yahweh. So when the children of Israel wanted to talk, they would say YHWH, send me to you. So instead of saying that, so from then on, from YHWH, you had Yahweh. So from Yahweh, right, you now had Joshua, all right? Oshia means help. Yahweh means help of God. And that's how you get the name Yehoshua. So the name of God is Yehoshua and not Jesus. So that's one of the other, that's number 5 that you have to notice when you're starting to spot, to point out frauds who call themselves pastors. If they preach in the name of Jesus, automatically you have to know that they are lying to you, because his name is not Jesus. His name is Yehoshua. All right. So that's number 5. Let's get on to number 6, which is actually tithing. All right. So before we get into the number 6 point that you have to note when knowing that someone is talking to you is a fraud who preaches in the name of God, We're looking at we're still doing a transvestigation of Carl Lentz and Levi Lusko, and we're looking at a picture of Carl Lentz right here. So as you can see, Carl Lentz is spreading like a woman. Female indentation above the navel, and when you see how high that is, and he's spreading because he has hips. So he's taken so much, she's taken, let me say it right, she's taken so much testosterone at this point that he's developing muscle. But as you can see, the shoulders, all right, are still tucked inside the bodies. As you can see right here, they're still trying to follow the contours of the body. No matter how much she's trying to bulk up, the shoulders are still following the contours of the body. And as you can see, the female indentation of spreading of the hips, and he just looks like he's her wife over here. All right, so another picture of Carl Lentz. And here is Carl Lentz again preaching in the name of Jesus, the fake God. And you can notice from this suit or jacket he's wearing that he has an arch in his back, clearly showing you that Carl Lentz is female. Another picture. And here is Carl Lentz again, as you can still I'm mixing up my words. As you can still see, his hands are following the contours of his body right there. Can you see that? Can you see that? And the elbows are still angling out, trying to follow the hourglass figure of a woman. All right, some more pictures. So we start with a definition of a tithe here, and I'm in Google right now, and tithe, and the definition here says that tithe, right? Tithe, 1/10 of annual produce or earnings formerly taken as a tax for the support of church and clergy. Now, there is nowhere in the Bible that God, says that tithing is for support of the clergy and the church. Because you have to understand, when you meet any of these fake pastors who tell you to tithe and sow money, because we've already shown you that sowing has nothing to do with money, all right? When you meet them and you ask them, all right, show me in the New Testament, I'm not talking about the Old Testament, show me in the New Testament, show me from the book, because the New Testament starts after the resurrection of Yehoshua. Show me from the Acts of the Apostles to the book of Revelation, where it says that I should tithe. Because tithe never had anything to do with money. Also, you needed to tithe your goods and your crops, not money. That's one thing you have to understand. When the Bible talks about tithe, it never talks about money. It was about food, crops, livestock. Nothing more. But what these guys will succeed in telling you is that when you sow money, it's a representation, all right, of the food, crops, or livestock. But that's not true, because the Bible will clearly show you that tithing only had to do, all right, with food, crops, and livestock. That's it. And like I said, the Bible is literal. It's not subject to any private interpretation. If God said he wanted money, he would have told those people, bring me money as tithes. He never said that. So let's go looking into this tithe fallacy to find out if it's true or it's not. But before I do, I pick up a picture of Levi Lusko. And as you can see right there from that picture, that is the stance of a woman, because there is an arch in the back. It's blurry, but Levi Lusko, this fake fraudulent pastors among the numerous numbers of televangelists that you see on TV, is actually female, lying to you and preaching the false religion of Jesus to you. Okay, so another picture. And here is Levi Lusko again with his so-called wife, with that fake smile, sending people, all right, to hell, and delivering false gospel that tingle the ears and make you feel good on a Sunday morning, telling you that he's male when he's actually female. Another picture. I already showed you that picture before. And here's Levi Lusko again, as you can see, with the fake stance right there, trying to hide that he has hips because he's female. But you can't deny the female indentation. all right, above the navel, and that he's spreading, and that where that curve starts aligns with his elbows, because Levi Lusko is a female. Another picture. Here's Levi Lusko again. As you can see, he's spreading with an hourglass figure of a woman, because Levi Lusko is a woman. Another picture. So we switch back to the tithe to show you we go to the real start of this tithing nightmare that, that sucked people into believing that they are actually, doing God service or whatsoever. So we read from the book of Deuteronomy, and it's from chapter number 14, King James Bible or Geneva Bible. And this is before the children of Israel could have a tabernacle, or let's say some sort of tent or tabernacle for them to actually bring the tithes to. So it says here from verse number 22, Deuteronomy chapter number 14, King James Geneva Bible says, "Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed that the field bringeth forth year by year." Increase of thy seed. And remember, we started by explaining what seed is. That means crops. Okay, it says, "And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place where he shall choose to place thy name there, the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, of thy oil, and the firstlings of thy herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear thy God always." So the tithe was meant for eating. But now you have these fake pastors telling you that the tithe is for them. It's for their upkeep. Let's keep reading to see what it says. And it says here, "And if the way be too long for thee, so thou art not able to carry your tithe," that means you're living so far away from the temple, okay? "Or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, when the Lord thy God had blessed thee, thou shalt turn it into money." So thou shalt turn whatever tithe into money, "and bind up the money in thy hand, and shall go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, and thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusted after." So you change the tithes, right? The tenth of your food crops, oil or whatever, right, into money. You take it along with you. You travel to where the temple is supposed to be. Then when you go there, all right, you take that money and you buy, all right, "And thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusted after. For oxen, you can buy oxen, sheep, wine, strong drink, or whatsoever thy soul desired. And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, and thine household. And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he had no part nor inheritance with thee." Now, why is this important? You have to understand that when God was arranging the tribes of Israel, all right, into tribes in the nation of Israel, the Levites weren't given no property because their service was to the temple of God. So whatsoever tithe that you have, all right, you also had to make account that since the Levite doesn't have any land, all right, because his service to the temple of God, you had to make sure that he was fed and he was taken care of. So the tithe you also had to eat with the children of the Levites. So that's what it's saying. So let me show you another portion in the Bible. You can actually see that these people love using to take money away from you. And they say that they make you feel so sad, so you have to give your money over. I'm just showing you we're number 6 right now, showing you the points to note of fake preachers, all right? The so-called Vatican priests who tell you lies and take your money, all right? So we're reading from Malachi chapter number 3, and it says here from verse 8, "Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me," right? "But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings." Do you hear any of your fake so-called pastors say this? then you have to understand you're being defrauded. You've been set up. So let's keep reading. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. But we've just shown you that the tithes just has to do with crops, with livestock, and not with money. If you changed it with money, you had to buy livestock and food again and eat. Let's keep reading. It says, and prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. Can you see what he's saying? So the whole idea, all right, was God to rebuke the devourer for the ground, so your crops should grow. He's not talking about money. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts, and all nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a delightsome land. So what did God say? Because these guys tell you if you bring your tithe in, that God's going to bless you. But God didn't say so here. He says that he will open the windows of heaven. What is the windows of heaven? By the way, the windows of heaven is rain. God was promising them that when they bring in the tithes, which was made of the tenth of crops of livestock, right, into the storehouse, that they could eat. Remember, they were supposed to eat it with the Levites, that he would make sure that rain would not cease in the land, and that the devourer would not destroy the crops, as you can see here. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time. He's talking about all of this was planting crops. Planting and harvesting crops. It had nothing to do with money. So why are these guys telling you to bring in money for them as a tithe? Because they are defrauding you and they're telling you lies. Now let me show you another portion in which they love to use to get your money. Now the portion now I'm showing you happens to be in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, and I'm reading from verse 6, King James Bible, Geneva Bible. It says, but this, okay, actually, let me just show you the portion that they love reading first, then I'll show you what they miss. I'm reading from verse 7. It says, every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver, right? But what they never ever show you is reading the verse before verse number 7 and the verse that follows after verse number 7 from 8 down into 10. So let me read it all together so you can actually see what you've been missing. All right. It says, but this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly, and he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Now, what these fake pastors turn this thing into is that the more you give, the more you're going to receive. I'm sorry if I'm laughing, but you know, I've been smoked on this a lot of times. So they say the more you give, the more you receive. But it's not talking about any of that. He's talking about sowing. Sowing, which means seed. So what is actually meaning here is that if you sow little in your farm, you're also going to reap just the amount that you sowed in your farm. If you sowed so much in your farm, that is how much you will reap. You will also reap much. So according as you have sown, all right, also give. That means if you sowed, let's say 10 seeds of rice or whatever, right? You can't give more than 10 seeds when you're trying to give these guys what you have, right? So give according to how you harvested. That's just what it means, right? So in here, and the whole entire time is not talking about money. It's talking about sowing, which has to do with seeds. All right. So let's keep on reading so you can actually understand. It says, every man according as he had proposed it in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. So these guys will turn this around and tell you to bring all the money that you have, all right, cheerfully, even if it's the last thing that you have, into their pockets, and that God will bless you. Then they keep on saying, and let me just keep on. I'm reading now so you can actually understand what you've been missing, because I was reading from verse 6. I'm reading down to 8, and it says, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency, all things may abound to every good work. As he had written, he had dispersed abroad, he had given to the poor, his righteousness remaineth forever. Now he that ministereth seed to the sower, both minister bread for your food, and multiply your seed sown, and increase the fruits of your righteousness. So everything that is talking about here is talking about planting crops and harvesting crops. It's not talking about your money. And this is what these guys use to take money from you. So that's number 6 on how to spot and point out a fraudulent preacher that we're showing to you in Levi, Lusko, and all the other preachers who are not a transgender, which we're still going to show you on this channel, that they are all fake. None of them tell you the truth. You'll learn something, but never the truth. So let's move on. So we move on to a picture of Carl Lentz, because like I said, people are not going to know where the transvestigation is going to start and where it's going to end. As you can see right here, Carl Lentz on testosterone, so high, pumped up, beefed up, but you can still see he can't shake away the curves of the pecs, which a female has, and his elbows are still aligned with his waist, a female waist, which is above the navel. And as you can see right here, the same goes, because I remember I told you guys it's going to be a 4-for-1. That means including Oprah Winfrey and also your favorite Justin Bieber, because she's such an easy target. Justin Bieber is a woman. As you can see right there, his arms are following the contours of the body, and they're spreading out, trying to follow the female hips. And as you can see right here, his elbows are aligned with his female indentation, which is above the navel, clearly showing you that Justin Bieber is a woman. Another picture. Here's a picture of these two fraudsters here, the most wicked woman in the world, Oprah Winfrey, and Carl Lentz. Once you see anybody on that show, you know this is a fraud. There is some deception going on. And here is Carl Lentz again with your favorite basketballer, whose name happens to be, what's this guy's name? I'm trying to recall. Kevin Durant. Yeah, that's his name. So do you mean to tell me that Kevin, because I've heard that this guy here in Carl Lentz is the spiritual teacher of Kevin Durant. I wonder what the hell he's teaching this dude. And this dude knows that this thing over here is a woman. So that's why you can't make no role models of anybody you see on TV, because you do not know what you're looking at. Because Kevin Durant has been lying to you and telling you tales when he ought to tell you the truth, that this so-called dude pastor, that who's his spiritual counselor or whatever, is a woman. He never did. Some more pictures. And here's Carl Lentz again with Justin Bieber. And like I showed you, when you're walking with someone, all right, your arms will always try to find the narrowest point in the body. And as you can see right there, Carl Lentz's arms right there is trying to find the narrowest points in Justin Bieber's body, which happens to be the waist of either your male or female. And usually the waist of a male is going to be far lower in the body, below his navel point, and for a woman it's going to be above the navel point. So as you can see right there, that his her hands, the hands of the transgender fake pastor of Carl Lentz right here, is trying to find the narrowest point of Justin Bieber's waist, which is right there. That's why those arms are there. And you can see the elbows of Justin Bieber aligning with that female indentation or waist. And right there and then you can see that Justin Bieber is a female as well as Carl Lentz. So let's keep moving on to something else. On point number 7 on how to spot this fake so-called preachers and pastors. We're going to have a whole list of them to go through. I'm sorry that the video is long, but this needs to be done because I want people to get out of this deception, because they've never actually studied the Bible, outside of what their indoctrination centers or so-called fake pastors tell them in their social gatherings or congregations, as they say. So right now we're looking at Matthew chapter number 24, and spot number 7 to spot a fake pastor is the rapture. Because they tell you the rapture means that you are going to be raptured and taken out of this world into heaven before the 7 years tribulation comes in and all that nonsense. But there's no such thing as a rapture in the Bible. If you're taken out of this world, that means you're dead. That's just what it means. So, because like I've always said before, when you study the Bible and how God dealt with saving the world, when he was saving Noah, he built a boat. All right, Noah was not taken out of this world, but he was saved while in it. The same thing also goes with Sodom and Gomorrah. When God wanted to save and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, did he take Lot out of the world? No, he didn't. He was still in this world, but he saved him from the destruction by taking him out of the city. Does it make sense? So what makes you think that it's going to be any different? Because even the words of Yehoshua clearly tell you. But people never actually read this because they just go and sit in these fake indoctrination centers and listen to pastors, and they say they're going to church when you are the church. So let me read this. I'm reading from Matthew chapter number 24. I'm reading from verse 37. It says, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." All right. Let me see, follow. You can follow my mouse right there. "For as in the days that were before the flood," all right, "they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away." The operative word you have to look right here is took. The flood took who? Took everybody else away that was not in the boat. Okay? Noah was still in this world. All right? He wasn't taken out of it. So the operative word here is took. So let's keep on reading. It says, "So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." So in the same way, all right, people are going to be taken out of this world. That means they're going to die when Yehoshua comes back. That's what it's saying. So you go on reading into chapter number 40, verse number 40 says, "Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken away." So when you're taken away, like it says here in the operative word here, took, okay? Took right here. It means you're dead. Because he has said, sorry if I'm mixing up my words, because Yehoshua said, okay, "For as in the days that were before the flood," okay, "they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood took them away." So there is no such thing as a rapture. If you're taken out of this world, that means you're dead. God visited you just like he did, all right, in the flood of Noah. He took the guys who did not go in, who did not believe him, out. They were dead. So that means the rapture means that those guys, if you're taken out, that means you're dead. So now let me read another portion in which this fake deceivers always like using. They say here from 1 Thessalonians chapter number 4, they read from verse 16, King James Bible, Geneva Bible, it says, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven." Now the operative word you have to look at right here is descend. All right? You're not going to see anything else more like ascend. So if you descend, that means you should be ascending, right? But if you don't see the word ascend, that means you're still here. So let's keep on reading. He says, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first." All right? It says those who slept in Yehoshua will rise first. then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together. So that means when Yehoshua descends and the dead rise, you that are alive, if you did not die at that time, shall be together, caught up together. That means you guys will all be assembled together. That's just what it means, all right? Caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. You're going to meet the Lord in the air, all right? That's what it means. It didn't say you're being raptured. You're going back to heaven. You're being taken out, as the case might be, or disappeared. You're just meeting him in the clouds. It doesn't say you're going to ascend, because here it's showing you here that he descended. That means he's going to be in the earth. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. So you meet the Lord, all right, while he's in the earth, right? You meet him in the clouds, but you guys are still here. You're not raptured. You're not gone away. So that's point number 7 on how you should know these fake deceivers. So I've given you all the points right now. I've given you point number 1, talking about the seeds. That seeds just means 2 things. It just means crops or your progeny. That means a son or daughter that you give birth to. Talked about the fact that they call themselves pastors, but we are all children of God. There's nobody should be your pastor, all right? No such thing. Or they use the term man of God or apostle. The apostles were those who existed physically with Yehoshua when he was here. And the only other apostle who did not exist, but he met God physically, all right? Or he made God, let's say God appeared to him, was Apostle Paul. Besides that, there are no other apostles. No apostles like Apostle Laura Lee on YouTube or any other apostle. Now, the other thing I also wanted to mention was the fact that, let me recall my thoughts. The fact that I wanted to mention was that so many of these pastors tell you that they are men of God, all right, that God spoke to them. You can't believe a word that comes out of their mouth because you were not there to know which God spoke with them. All right? Does it make sense? So you guys shouldn't fall into that trap when they say God spoke to me, God, I had a revelation. You were not there. So you just can't go off someone's words. It's just like somebody telling you that they have $1 million. You were not there. They're just telling you a story. Okay? So I've showed you that on point number 3, and the next point was the fact that they say that the Jews or the Hebrews are the so-called people that you find here in Israel, so every prophecy is based off of that. That's not true either. I've showed you that from the Bible. I've shown you also on point number 4 that the name of God is not Jesus. His name is Yehoshua. All right? Then I showed you also on point number 5 about tithing, that it's got nothing to do with tithes. I showed you on point number 6 and point number 7 to take notice of that the rapture, there is no such thing as a rapture. So these are all the points that you have to notice. I've given you 7 points, but I may have mixed up 1 or 2 on those. But if you listen to the whole entire video, I've showed you how to spot all these fake pastors, and that if you've fallen to any of those teachings, I've talked to you about the fact that the church, I think that's the point that I missed, that you are the church and not a church building. You are the church. So these are the points on how to notice fake pastors. All right. And if you notice all these points, if you've noticed any of these points in any of the meetings or any of the people who call themselves preachers or whatever the case might be, you should know that they're a fraud. So let me move on to show you some other things about that. These people all belong to what they call the World Council of Churches, which is led by the Vatican, and the National Council of Churches, all led by the Vatican, and that they can tell you no truth. Let's go. One more thing before I go into that. I forgot to show you guys this as well. Understanding the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is very easy to understand. There are 2 keys in the book of Revelation. 1, when you see the word beast in the book of Revelation, you have to understand that it's talking about kingdoms or kings. So you just substitute the word beast for kingdom or kings, and the book of Revelation is going to be very, very clear to you. So those keys are in Daniel chapter number 7. I'm reading from King James Bible or Geneva Bible. It says here in verse number 23, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. So you can see right there, beast means kingdom. And if you read also in verse 24, it says, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings. All right. So once you substitute the book of Revelation, when you see the word beast and you substitute kings and kingdoms, I advise you to read the Geneva Bible when you're reading the book of Revelation, so you can read the notes. You can actually understand what it's saying. Then the other key that you have to understand is that when you see a woman in the book of Revelation, when you see a harlot or church in the book of Revelation, it means a woman. So once you see a harlot or a church, substitute woman. Okay, that's all it is. And then you are going to understand what it's talking about, because the Bible likens the church to a woman or vice versa. So when you see woman, when you see woman in the book of Revelation, all you need to substitute in is church. When you see harlot, substitute church. Then you're going to understand it. So that's what I wanted to make you to take notice of. And let's go further. So next definition is defining purgatory, because purgatory is one thing that the Vatican uses so much to lie to its lay people who haven't taken out the time to study and to actually know if it's true. So purgatory here in Roman Catholic meaning means a place, a state of suffering inhabited by the souls of sinners who are expiating their sins before going to heaven. There is no such thing as purgatory. You have to understand that. If you really want to understand, you need to read the book of Enoch. But I'm just going to give you a little story so you can understand the book of understand that purgatory doesn't exist. Purgatory did exist before Yehoshua resurrected, but after he resurrected, in short, I'm saying it wrong. There's no such thing as purgatory. All right. What the Roman Catholic Church system likens to purgatory is what the term is called Abraham's bosom. Okay, because if you read in Luke chapter number 16 from verse 22 to 23, you find out, and let me just make it a very quick story here. Hell had 3 places before Yehoshua came. So usually the 3 places were divided. Hell was divided into 3 places. There was a part called Abraham's bosom, and that was the part where if people believed in God and they died, they went to Abraham's bosom in hell. Okay, it was a place. It wasn't it wasn't like the other 2 parts in hell. All right. Now the second part of hell was for the fallen angels. All right. That's where they stayed. That's where they lived until whatsoever time God would judge them. Now the third place of hell was for people who were very, very corrupt. That means men who had died not believing in God, all right, who had blasphemed his name all through their lives. So they had a third part for them. So they were separated by 3 parts. So if you read the story of the rich man and the poor man who died and went to Abraham's bosom, that will make your understanding very, very clear. So what happened was that when Yehoshua went to hell and defeated the devil who had the keys to all these places, that's when the Bible says that if you read, let me see if I can find that portion. Hold on a second. So if you read, what I was trying to explain was the part of Abraham's bosom was that when Yehoshua, went to hell and defeated Satan. If you read here in Matthew chapter number 27, you can read from verse 52. He says, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose and came out of the graves after his resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. So it's from this part that you have all the saints from David down who died believing in Yehoshua. That's where they all went to Abraham's bosom. And it was just called Abraham's bosom just because Abraham was a man of faith, one that God made a promise with. So from then they all went back up to heaven with God. So you can read about Abraham's bosom from Luke chapter number 16, and you can read from verse 22 to 23 King James or Geneva Bible. So let me finish up this story so we can end the transvestigation properly. All right. So what I want to show you is the fact that the World Council of Churches is all Vatican control. Doesn't matter what name it is. So when you look at the website of the World Council of Churches right here, you can pause the video and copy out that link. What I want you to notice in the About section of the World Council of Churches, it says here, it is a community of churches on the way to visible unity in one faith and one Eucharistic fellowship. Who uses that word Eucharistic? All right, it's the Vatican, and let me show you what it means right here. So let me give you a little bit brief synopsis of the World Council of Churches, its history. It says here that let me just hold on. Let me read. I'm reading the Wikipedia page right now on the national. Sorry. I'm reading the Wikipedia page on the World Council of Churches right here. It says here, let me scroll down into the web page a bit to show you what it means, sorry. So now here is the trick for people not to know that the World Council of Churches is also, it's Vatican control. Because if you go into the Wikipedia page and read on the World Council of Churches, what it says here, notably, the Roman Catholic Church is not a member, although it sends accredited observers to meetings. The WC arose out of the ecumenical movement and has its basis on the following statement. So right there and then, even though they say they're not involved, but this word right here, ecumenical, it's all Catholic, it's all Vatican. And I'm going to show you that right now. So hold on a second. So I'm on a web page that tries to define ecumenism. It's from Wikipedia. You can pause the video, or you can just go look it up online. You're going to see it. It says modern ecumenical movement. It says here, one understanding of the ecumenical movement is that it came from the Roman Catholic Church's attempts to reconcile with Christians who had become separated over theological issues. Can you see that? So even though it might say the World Council of Churches right here, it says here, notably the Roman Catholic Church is not a member, it's actually lying. And then you can see that the very next word it says is ecumenical movement. So they are trying to dissociate itself from it, but they're actually the instigators of it. So I don't want you guys to have any benefit of the doubt that the Vatican controls all churches through the 501c3 tax exempt status. And let me just show you that. So I'm on the web page of the 501c3 organizations right here. And as you can see right here, it lists churches and religious organizations on the 501c3. And one of the 501c3 acts that makes sure that if you want to keep your tax exempt status, that means all those fake fraudulent pastors want to make sure that all the monies that they steal from the congregation and make people give by playing with their minds and emotions that they keep without having to file tax exempt status, they must make sure that they must not include themselves in any of these activities. As you can see right here, says Section 501c3 organizations are restricted in how much political and legislative lobbying. What does that mean? It means you cannot say anything against the government. So for example, if the government is saying that it's okay for people to get let's say homosexuality and transgenderism and all that other nonsense that the government supports, you cannot talk about it. Otherwise, you're going to lose your tax exempt status. That is as clear as night as day. You can read it right here. It says Section 501c3 organizations are restricted in how much political and legislative lobbying activities they may conduct. It says for a detailed discussion, see political and lobbying activities. Can you see that? So that's why to show you that all these people are frauds. There is nothing there's nothing you learn. You learn no truth from a church, organization, or pastor. You might learn something, but it's not gonna be the truth. So I go scroll down the list of popular tele-evangelists. All right, you can pause the link right here and go copy out that website and go read. You can see from here that it talks about all of these guys: Billy Graham, Pat Robertson, Joel Austin, Harold Camping, T.D. Jakes, Jerry Falwell, Franklin Graham, Fulton J. Sheen, Zola Levitt, Robert Schuller, Jimmy Swaggart, D. James Kennedy, John Hagee, Benny Hinn, Oral Roberts, Charles Stanley, Charles Coughlin, Jim Baker, Maurice Cerullo, Peter Popoff, Richard Rossi, Herbert W. Armstrong, Adrian Rogers, David Jeremiah, Clifford Dollar, the list goes on. Jack Van Imp, Rail Polk, Jesse Duplantis, Steve Munsey, Eddie Long, Kenneth Hagan, Robert Roberts, Kenneth Copeland, Gene Scott, John Ankerberg, Billy Joe Dougherty, Robert Schuller, Jonah Vinzini, Joseph Ferrer, Bob Larson, Paul Crouch, Kerry Shook, A. Allen, Reverend Ike, Rex Humbert, Charles Fuller, Jerry Savelle, Doug Batchelor. This is the only person I could think you could listen to a bit, because he tells you that the Vatican is the problem. You can listen to him a bit, but I'm not too sure of anybody else. Doug Batchelor, you can listen to him for a bit. Noel Jones, Ella Serrano, James Robinson, Garner Tate Armstrong, Rod Parsley, Robert Tilton, Brian Houston, Jim Whittington, Dwight Nelson, Walter M. Meyer, Don Stewart, Kenny Thomas, Richard Dodge, Billy James Hargis, David Reagan, Ken Reggelo, John Vanderman, Eddie Villanova, Ernest Angeli, Mike Murdoch, Vivi Grant, Randy Morrison, Mark Finley, Chris Oyekilome. This dude makes a lot of fake miracles. And one of the things you have to do a lot about miracles is like this. This is how they trick you into believing fake miracles, all right? Let's say, for example, someone has maybe chest pain, all right? They tell you that the person cannot walk. All right, so the person comes in for chest pain examination, but when they're trying to make the miracle look like he has a problem, they tell you he can't walk, and then they tell him to stand up and walk, and you actually believe the guy is okay, but he actually has chest pain, but they just made him walk. Or sometimes you come into and then they find out that, let's say for example you're in some of drugs, let's say drugs for that maybe what's the typical example right here? You had maybe high blood pressure, right? And the high blood pressure kind of slowed you down. What these guys do is try to find the medication that you used and then hyperdose you on that medication. So when they tell you to stand up, by the time the miracle is being displayed, you actually believe that you're being healed, but it's all fake. This is how all these guys operate. Or they naturally pay someone who's fake or someone who's not actually sick to pretend that the person is sick, and then they heal the person, and you guys actually believe it's a miracle. This is how all these guys do this stuff. So Chris Oyekilome, I think, let me see where, I think he's in Africa. Yeah, he's in Africa, somewhere in Africa. He's a fraud, one of the biggest frauds of them all. Don't fall for it, okay? Like D.L. Jakes Jr., Gordon P. Robertson, Zachary Timms, Sean Bonestra, Mike Velarde, Chris Cotier, Larry Lee, Logan Sekulo, Steve Horn, Paul Rader, Lesuna, Ori Mikkel. I mean, the list goes on, including Benny Hinn. They are all professional fraudsters. You shouldn't trust a word that comes out of their mouth. They have never told you truth, and they'll never tell you any truth. So let's visit some websites of the National Council of Churches and just read up on some stuff before we just shut this thing down, okay? So actually, I'm still on the World Council of Churches because they try to make the World Council of Churches look like it's not a Vatican thing. But I'm going to show you that these people have nothing to do with God. So the word that I'm going to use here is, because as I've highlighted on the screen, is the Eucharistic Fellowship. Eucharistic is a Vatican term. And let me just show you, break down the meaning of Eucharistic so you can actually understand what it's saying. So if I'm on a web page right here, you can pause the video. It's called Your Dictionary. It says Eucharistic here. The adjective says here comparative, more Eucharistic, superlative, most. What's it saying here? Most Eucharistic. So one of the words of Eucharistic here says theosophy. Can see theosophy pertaining to the Eucharist. Okay. So if you look at the meaning of theosophy online, right, it says any number of philosophies maintaining that a knowledge of God may be achieved through spiritual ecstasy, direct intuition, or special individual relations, especially the movement founded in 1875 as the Theosophical Society by Helena Blavatsky and Henry Steele occult. So you can see here that the World Council of Churches is talking about something that has nothing to do with God. When has God had anything to do with theosophy? From the meaning of Eucharist, theosophy pertaining to the Eucharist. And what does Eucharist mean, right? Eucharistic. It is worn by bishops, priests, deacons, and subdeacons under the other Eucharistic vestment, either at Mass or functions connected with it. Can you see that? It has nothing to do with God. So with that, let me just shut down the story that we have talked about so much, because we're still under investigation for this guy's called Carl Lentz, who was so-called fake pastors, and Levi Lusko, who've been preaching false theologies and teaching you in the name of Jesus, which is actually a fake name, which people haven't come to an understanding of, but you will sooner or later. So let's just shut down that. And because we're actually coming to the end of the investigation, like I said, the whole idea of today's video was to make sure that from henceforward that people watch the whole video, sit through it. It's a long video, but I think it will do you some good. That's all. So we started with Carl Lentz, and it's just going to be rapid fire. So it's just the end of the video. And as you can see, we've shown you that Carl Lentz has the indentation above the navel. His arms are tucked in and filling the contour of the body. He has narrow shoulders, and he has that disproportionate, unasymmetrical chest muscles together, which are aligned with the abdominal muscles, to show you that it's female, because a female's breast one is usually larger than the other. It's just rapid fire. We're going forward. We showed you the female indentation above the navel and how his woman is trying to find the narrowest point in his body to show you that it's female. And that's again, and we also show you that Oprah Winfrey is female, and still show you that the narrowest point and this so-called dude is above the navel, clearly showing you that he's a woman. As you can see, he still has that hourglass figure right there. You can see that very clearly right there, hourglass figure and female indentation above the navel for Carl Lentz. Vatican, and we also show you this, he's spreading. Also show you the female indentation right there, that is a woman. Arch in the back, woman. We showed you this picture that arms are still filling the contours of the body. He's jacked up on testosterone and trying to look male, but he's a woman. You can see that. We also talked about Justin Bieber, showing you that we had a 4-for-1 special today, showing you that he's woman. This is woman also. And we showed you all this, that Kevin Durant knows that this thing is female. You can't trust them. We showed you this picture. We didn't show you this picture actually, but these are two women walking. As you can see, that's a female gait right there, the way he's walking, right? Carl Lentz is a woman, and so is Justin Bieber. And that's and this is Justin Bieber again. You can still see the arch in the back, and Carl Lentz trying to pose here as a man, but he's a woman, and all that. And here is Lil Wayne with both of them. That's why you can't trust anything that comes out of his mouth, because they're all in the lower strata of the Illuminati, and they know that these two dudes are actually females, right? We moved on to Lusko, Levi Lusko, show you that he's always standing with his feet apart, trying to hide the fact of his wide hips, because he knows for a fact that he's a woman, and his wife does also. They've been lying to you all this like they're Christians. There's not, they've gotten, you can't even call yourself a Christian. If you call yourself a Christian, the way I see it is you're a fraud already. You can see the stance right there, always trying to fake the hips, right? Trying to have to stand in a wide stand, because he knows that he's a woman, praying in the name of the Lord. I don't wonder which Lord, showing that that's a woman right there. We show you that picture. We show you this one, his wife trying to find the narrowest point in his body, which is above the navel, right there, woman. And still doing the same thing there. Elbows are aligned with the narrowest point in the body. The female waist above the navel. We showed you that. We show you that he has an arch in his back, Levi Lusko. We show you that that's a female stance right there. We show you what else, that Levi Lusko, pastor, is a pastor as usual. We show you that stance is not normal. He's trying to hide tricks of the trade, trying to hide the hips, but is a woman. And you see the hourglass figure woman. You see that fake stance again, standing with the feet wide apart, trying to hide the hips, right? woman. And see that hourglass figure still right there, woman Levi Lusko. And that's another picture, still trying to fake the wide hips by standing so wide with the feet apart, right? When normal females stand with their feet closed because this is like too much work, showing you that Levi Lusko is a woman. Look at that hourglass figure right there, still a woman. And that hourglass figure, widest point below the crotch, woman. And look at them here, right? Levi Lusko, Carl Lentz with Kevin Durant, faking to you that these two dudes are males when they're females. And with that, we've come to the end of today's video. Thank you. If you learned something, that's great. Subscribe, stay tuned, and I'll leave you with these words. Please, 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 look with your eyes, but see with your brain. Thanks, and bye-bye.